Have you ever wondered what happens beyond this physical world? Have you noticed synchronistic events soon after you have asked a question? Are there times you simply know something, even though in this physical lifetime you have no experience or memory of that topic? How do we know what we know? Is it intuition, belief, a physical sensation? Join Sue Tribolini as she explores these questions and more.
Welcome. A little bit slow in the uptake today. We've been having some connection problems. But I'm Sue Tribolini. Welcome to the Invisible Dimension radio show. I'm speaking to you from Seattle, where it's less cold than it was last week, and a lot less cold than it has been all over the country. Today, my guest is Louise Hauk, and our topic is streaming consciousness. Welcome, Louise.
Hi there. Great to be on board. Yes.
And before I introduce you properly, I'd just like to say a little something about this show, the Invisible Dimension radio show. I created it to explore beyond the physical and visible in our world. I hoped for conversation as if we were all sitting in my living room, and I picked guests that I felt would be interesting to talk with. The show has already taken its own energy, identity, life force, and it's evolving every day with new ideas for new shows and guests. I could call all the thoughts and events that brought me to be on a radio show as synchronicities. Louise might describe this as being in the flow, or possibly even connecting to the stream of consciousness, and that is our topic for today. So streaming consciousness, what is it? How do you get into its flow?
Well, Sue, let me just begin by saying how glad I am that you're doing this show, because for years when we've rendezvoused in Seattle, we've always loved sharing information, and you've synthesized so much from over the years. I'm so glad that you're putting it out there to the public now, because you're so knowledgeable, so aware, and I'm just doing a high five because I'm so glad you're doing this.
Well, thank you so much, Louise, and you didn't let me introduce you.
Okay.
So Louise is a futurist, an intuitive, and an author. She leads workshops and does group readings all over the world. She also trains apprentices, which perhaps she can talk about a little bit later as well. And she does her individual readings both over the internet and phone. And as she was just saying, we met in Seattle when she was here doing a workshop, I would say about 15 years ago, and she's become a really good personal friend in the meantime. So again, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah, how things evolve in the flow, eh, what?
Right. The flow of connectivity problems.
What a metaphor. And in fact, we're all in the flow, we're all in the stream, and then it's a matter of getting into alignment, being the observer of our thoughts and of our life, and really getting into the flow where we all have access to this highly intuitive, multidimensional information. And then once you learn what takes you out of the flow, which is fear and the ego self grabbing the wheel, I call mine Edith, and I give Edith the ego a hug and put her in timeout when I see her trying to write the script or control things. And then we suddenly know we're back in the flow when we get the phone call, the parking place, bada bing, bada bang. The latest for me that is so exciting in the work that I do with my apprentices, we're diving deep in the flow and really exploring the vastness of multidimensional information. And I chuckle whenever an apprentice is scanning my consciousness and getting certain intuitive impressions, and I hear them say, now how do I put this into words? And I say, welcome to my world. Because like telepathy, you can get 3 paragraphs of information in a dot, and then you have to filter it down into the linear way we communicate verbally. When I was just doing remote viewing with an apprentice this morning, and I'll focus on a photo, and I'll say go, and then they type into a chat box the impressions they're getting. So they'll get the physical impressions of of the photo that I'm transmitting, but they'll get the nuances, incredible nuances. I was focusing on a photo this morning that I took underground at the Union Square subway station when I lived in New York. And it's a picture of Amish girls who've come to town, and they're singing in this hallway, in this tunnel of this subway. And the apprentice, he got the impression of being underwater, being underground. And the apprentices often pick up on these Amish girls' little white capped hats they're wearing or caps they're wearing. And one interpreted it as marshmallows, and, so the impressions that get translated through our own filter. But even beyond that, this multi-layered, nuanced information. Another example, I was focusing on the home where I lived with my British husband and where he grew up. And I was focusing on a photo of it. And the apprentice, who happened to be a psychiatrist, which kind of says that he's into the more subjective interpretation of things, he said, I just get all these little notes. And he had no way of knowing that husband had a habit of making notes to himself on little Post-its that would be all over the house. So it really transcends this very limiting lower vibration on which we communicate verbally. So this multi-layered information, multi-dimensional information, I'm also enchanted with how interactive it can become. And so when a client is asking about a manuscript they've submitted or that they're working on, I can have the manuscript talk to us and it'll show us what chapter needs work or what way it would like the dialogue to go. Everything has energy and everything communicates. So that's what's really such a hoot in just really pushing the boundaries of this unlimited information. I was just listening to the current meditation experience with Deepak and Oprah and using the expression unbounded awareness when you're meditating and transcending and so on. I guess I would call this unbounded information, intuitive information, and I'm just captivated by all that you can do with it when you dive deep.
So Louise, you've talked several times about apprentices. Are you teaching your apprentices to do what you do, and what does a session with an apprentice look like?
Well, once I get them in the groove, they start with the invocation that I use when I do consultations. I invite them to modify it, but there are certain buzzwords that I think are important for the readee to be hearing. And so we begin each session with them. We uncross our limbs and take a deep breath. That gets us in sync, and then they scan my consciousness. That's how we start each session, and then we go on into different exercises, and I'll mention a couple of examples. But I actually have to monitor what I'm watching on television the night before I meet with an apprentice, because I remember years ago one picked up on scenes Desperate Housewives that I'd watched the night before. And it really demonstrates how we're all part of each other and how consciousness merges with another in or out of the body when we're in the stream and piggyback on each other's frequency. It's really that simple. If people only knew and weren't so spooked about it all.
I remember being in one of your workshops one time, quite a few years ago, when you tuned in towards the end. You started talking about a dog in a car, and you were relating the dream that I'd had the night before. It was absolutely fascinating.
Well, it's really consciousness. It's really all the same. And when we drop the body, as I purposefully, irreverently refer to the illusion of death, which it is, our thoughts create our reality instantly. You'll get the heaven that is created from your consciousness. So my sister-in-law had said that Sheep then plans to land in Aziz candy store. I experience loved ones' heavens merging with their consciousness. I hang out with them in the non-physical at poker games with their war buddies, or bridge games, or playing on the golf course. There are many golf heavens, I guess I could say. And so I believe that as we're raising consciousness, raising our frequency in this lower dense physical dimension, that our experience while being physical beings running around in these little golf carts we call our bodies, that our experience as physical beings is going to equate more and more with those in the non-physical. Faster manifestation, a greater awareness of this continuum of consciousness that doesn't end in or out of the body, and our ability to go beyond time. One of the exercises I do with apprentices is, there's two different ones I do with time travel, and one is Future Fridays. We go to the upcoming Friday and look around. I mentioned in my most recent book, Streaming Consciousness, that I was doing this with an apprentice, and so we went to the following Friday, and I'm saying we're wanting to, I merged with her timeless consciousness. I'm seeing through her eyes. I look around her office and describe a picture and a manuscript she's working on. And I said, we're needing to put something outside, either, I don't know, recycling or for the mailman. And she, that's not supposed to be. And she said, everybody wants to be part of this. Everyone's wanting to chime in. Sometimes it's everything. Sometimes, when we raise our vibration, everyone calls. Everybody wants to be part of it, even and knock at the door. Jehovah's Witness, they want to be part of it too. Only they don't know what's going on this level, this level of connectivity. Anyway, where was I? The continuum of consciousness where I was seeing through her eyes this upcoming Friday, and I said, we're needing to put something outside. She said, it's my recycling day. So then I went on with other things. We ended our little time travel adventure, and then I almost hear a click when people flip back to their left brain, their rational left brain that's going to censor this kind of information. And she said, first she said, this was really cool. Then I almost hear a click. She's back on her rational left brain, and she says, how do we know we really went to the future? And I said, how did I know that Friday's your recycling day? I was there. So we really have to overcome past perceptions, past teaching and fear about how expansive consciousness is, and that it does go beyond time and death, and that we're all connected in the stream.
And that you can go there intentionally. That's fascinating to me.
Well, most of the exercises I do with apprentices are designed to outrun the censoring mind. And we get a momentum going so quickly, and that they're bringing through so much information so fast that they can't pause and let their left brain jump in and say, this is crazy, you just made that up, this doesn't make any sense. And so sometimes they can't believe what they have brought through. I remember a workshop years ago in San Diego, and we were doing an exercise where we were, a participant was bringing through information, and it's, again, positioned so that she can't doubt what's going through for this other person. And she was so shocked at what she brought through. And she said, where did I get this? How did I do this? She freaked out. I said, do you remember the name of the workshop today? But it just drove her crazy when she flipped back into her rational mind to try to wrap around this highly intuitive information. You can't. It just resists it. It's like a Mac and a PC. Never the twain shall meet. In terms of left brain, right brain.
So, Louise, have you always had this ability to see beyond? Oh, gosh, that was the title of one of your books.
Oh, hey. Oh, hey. And if it weren't, it should be. There were things I just knew, and when I was 4 years old, I said to my mother, when you go to heaven, we'll write letters. And both of my parents...
So I'm sorry, but I'm noticing we're coming up to a break, and this sounds like a wonderful conversation. So why don't we go back there after the break?
All righty.
And so be sure to tune back in in a few seconds, minutes.
Yes, time-wise.
Time-wise, yes. This time-wise.
Yes.
The time of this reality. Okay, speak to you in a bit.
Many of us think we are stuck in the physical dimension, that our problems around money, relationships, and work are real and unchangeable as we mimic or adopt the beliefs, norms, and viewpoints of our families, cultures, and those around us. What if we are stuck in our heads? What if there is something else? What if what we imagine to be universal truth is malleable and changeable? How do we know what we know? Tune into the Invisible Dimension radio show with Sue Tribolini to explore these questions and learn practical tools to change your life every Wednesday at 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, and 12 p.m. Pacific on A2Zen.fm. This is the Invisible Dimension radio show with Sue Tribolini. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. at 815-880-8255. In Canada, 613-800-8736. In the UK, 033-0001-0625. Or Skype us at A2Zen.fm. You can also connect at www.A2Zen.fm. Click on the chat room button to join us live. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the Invisible Dimension radio show. So, Louise, you were talking about, did you describe it as letters to your mother?
Oh, I just said to her, I remember the scene. You know, these intuitive, almost transcendent moments are so indelible and so retrievable as are certain intuitive impressions, as opposed to memories that you're trying to access from your memory bank. But I can remember pulling out of my driveway in La Cañada, California, and my mother was driving, and I turned and I said to her, "When you go to heaven, we'll write letters." And she said, "Oh, okay." And both of my parents passed when they were 51, 4 years apart from each other, and indeed we've stayed in touch. There seems to be an element of this in the family. I never knew my father's mother, who was a writer and historian for the Pony Express, and I was named after her. You wonder why, and I carry an aspect of her. I'm moving forward and through where she left off, even though that's very linear. I think there are aspects of the soul to pursue or to carry on from or with from other life space experiences. I call them other life spaces, since all of time is occurring simultaneously out there. And when I see other life spaces that are relevant to something I'm talking about with a client, it looks to me as if they sort of hydroplane in from this other life space and hover over the present. And their relevancy is sometimes absolutely poetic, that confirms the karmic nature of some challenge. And for me, it's like sticky tape that you can't shake loose. Why does this bug me so much? Why can't I let go of it? So sometimes seeing those overlays that confirm what the soul is carrying on, what the purpose of recreating a semblance of an old theme, what the purpose is to serve, to move beyond and to balance. So that grandmother, her mother used to wake up her husband in the middle of the night and say, "Hitch up the buggy, so-and-so is ill." And he'd never question her. He'd, hitch it up, and they'd go to the aid of a friend or relative who was ill or having, in peril. My daughter is also very intuitive, and when she was in 4th grade, I went to pick her up at her friend's house where she'd gone after school, and the housekeeper came to the door with wide eyes and said, "Oh, Suiha, oh, your daughter." I said, "What?" Apparently my daughter had read her palm and told her all about her boyfriend. And I got Adrian in the car, and I said, "Why did you do that? I mean, I don't do palm reading, and we never did stuff like that." But she just shrugged and said, "I just thought there were things you ought to know." So I proceeded. It was tricky. I wanted to support her with her gifts, but not let her think she was special or better than anyone. When she was 4, she came down the stairs and said, "I talked to your mommy today." And of course, neither of my children got to know my parents. I said, "Oh, where were you?" And she said, "I was playing in my closet." And I said, "What did Grandma Ruth say?" And she said she laughed about scratching in the bushes. And no one knew that when Mother and I would take brisk walks and how the circulation makes your legs itch, and we would jump in the bushes, scratch all over, and laugh so hard we'd almost fall over. So nobody knew that. So there is an element. My son is very multidimensional, and you need to leave him alone a good hour when he gets up. And the way I see it is that he hasn't come in completely from his galaxy. He's just really not all here for a good hour. So both of my children really get what I do, and I've made it a point with them and with my clients to present this in a very grounded way, and it's as opposed to woo-woo, and it does no one any good if it's not relevant and doesn't improve people's lives. A few apprentices have tried to show off. One did with a date that she was hoping would be a lasting relationship, and she did a reading on him, or else she told him what I had picked up on, and it just quashed the whole thing. I said, now it's as if you know more than him, and you're not discovering this together, and it's only your slant, fooey on you. So it really needs to be information that's life-enhancing, life-expanding, illuminating, and so on. So there does, as I say, there seems to be an element of this in the family, but it just has never been a challenge to tap into loved ones and just have a sense of a bigger picture unfolding.
And were you always believed?
Did I always believe?
Well, what did your mother get what you were able to do, for instance, or were you shut down?
In her own way, she was very spiritual. She was a church organist and a concert pianist, and people used to say that angels sang when she played. Neither of my parents really got to know me as a psychic, and I have no idea how they would feel about it, except I get their love and support from the non-physical. But Mother had precognitive dreams. She once dreamt a whole symphony in her sleep, of course, where our impressions are nonlinear. And then she wished she'd written it down when she woke up. So there is that, and in the way that Native Americans believe that our dream world is the real world and this is the illusion, it really is all the same. But we have to kind of funnel down into these bodies in this time-oriented space-time continuum to pay attention to where we are in it, and that's why we have linear time. But consciousness is so much more vast and timeless. What was your question?
Whether you were ever, let me actually, there's a question in the chat room which I'm going to read to you because it goes to the same point. She says, I do believe that children can be in or receive messages from another dimension. But what would you say to an adult like me who no longer feels it's possible?
Well, that is a very good question. First of all, relative to children who can receive these messages, some call them indigo children. I like not to label them, but there's a whole wave of souls coming in these days who, at 3 or 4 years old, they might say to their mother, when I was your mommy, I used to drive you down this street. And I call them children remembering, children who come in remembering. And on my website, if you go to media and then gallery, in the first row of pictures in the photo album, there's a picture of Tinkerbell, and that's a wonderful story in itself, an elemental that came out on film. And then there's 3 pictures of me holding up children, and these are children I interpreted to their parents before they were born. When I'm doing a consultation, when a grandmother or a relative, an ancestor, or a friend, when they indicate to me that they plan to reincarnate in the proximity of my client, when they point to their etheric heads, that's code, or like charades, and it is all one game of charades to me, the way it appears to me. When they point to their etheric heads, that's a clue. That's code for I will be a child coming in remembering. My knee-jerk response to them is prove it, and then they transmit to me a list of things that will be occurring after their birth. And on that row of pictures, the example of Connor was the best so far, where I'd forgotten. I don't remember what comes for people in readings, but when I read them later, something might feel a little deja vu, like we've said this before. But when Connor was born, when he was 2 months old, his mother emailed me and said, 3 of the things on that list happened today. And apparently he had transmitted a list that included the sound of an ice cream truck going by, a crib mobile being off balance, and a dog hitting its head. And the dog that morning had sneezed so hard he hit his head on the floor. And Connor is in his crib, 2 months old, laughing hysterically. And so these souls, before they're born, they will often say, and so after I'm born, when you see me laugh, know that it's not gas. So that is, again, this continuum of consciousness. So the second part of the question, so what would you say to adults that no longer feel it's possible? So many of my apprentices came in this way, with this knowing, with these abilities, and they've been scared, spooked by them. They may have come to a very religious, spiritual orientation in their childhood. They felt different or ostracized. And I remember one apprentice we met at a workshop that I was doing, and afterwards she said, I suddenly feel so free. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, it feels like my soul's been let out of the closet. And so some people with their intuitive gifts or this very multidimensional knowing have felt very closeted, very sequestered, and apart from the rest. And that's so gratifying to me when I welcome them into the fold and help them trust, bring back those gifts, but not really go back to how they used to sense things intuitively, but incorporate them, embrace them, and move forward and see what new ways they can pull in this information. So one device I have found, I call them templates, and it's really a filter. I observe how an apprentice tends to intuit, and then we set up a visualization. Brad's a longtime apprentice who is in the engineering field, and he travels and does PowerPoint presentations. So his template is he pretends he's doing a PowerPoint presentation, and he gets positioned to bring in this flow of information. He gets in the flow of the stream. Then he imagines information comes down into the slides he'd be presenting in front of him. That's the present. The slides to his left are the past, and the slides to the right are the future, and the souls on the other side, souls in the non-physical. I don't say the other side anymore because it's sort of adding to the perception that it's a place, and it's not. It's simply a state of consciousness. Anyway, so these templates help them sort out the information and then cluster it, and then so that you can then go back and work with it. Interpretation is everything. Once you get over the hurdles, the self-doubt, the censoring of this information, and you open the floodgates, the next challenge is to hold it in your consciousness, to be able to work with it and interpret it. And interpretation is 9/10 of it, because it will unavoidably be influenced by your own filter. I had a very intuitive apprentice who should not do this professionally, and very few do. Most people come into the program to simply be able to do this more on demand and fine-tune it, exercise that muscle, and so on. But this gal was a self-proclaimed drama queen, and she began every download of information with, oh my God, OMG, you won't believe. And so she had that very dramatic, dark filter that tainted or influenced the way she interpreted everything. I tend to be pretty lighthearted and have a very positive filter. So when a client says to me, okay, give me everything you get, I can handle it. And I say, well, I do. I give everything that I get, and it's all left up to interpretation. It's never interpreted in an ominous way or a way that could instill fears. I think that's dastardly when information is interpreted in a way that's going to make someone fearful or obsessed. And future information is tricky, by the way, that it not take people out of the present or instill fear or caution or obsessiveness. But I go to the future and hang out and look around to point people in the direction of a better future where some don't believe that they deserve greater happiness in their life. And also, when I go to the future and look back, I can, as I merge with their timeless consciousness, I can get the contrast. What's new and different with this future relationship as contrasted with relationships in the past? So I can access their memories from the future and get the contrast of what's new and improved. Should they pay attention, be observant, be present in the present? The portal to the very best. Yeah.
So then that's the key, to be present, be observant, and basically to test it out for yourself, to practice, notice.
The portal, the doorway to the very best future is by being fully present, is living fully in the present. And if you're not living in the present, the way I put it is that the universe can't find you to deliver the gift because you're not there, you're not present.
That's brilliant. And we're now going to be present to a break. So when you come back, perhaps you can talk more about the portal to the future.
All righty.
Thank you.
Many of us think we are stuck in the physical dimension, that our problems around money, relationships, and work are real and unchangeable as we mimic or adopt the beliefs, norms, and viewpoints of our families, cultures, and those around us. What if we are stuck in our heads? What if there is something else? What if what we imagine to be universal truth is malleable and changeable? How do we know what we know? Tune into the Invisible Dimension radio show with Sue Tribolini to explore these questions and learn practical tools to change your life every Wednesday at 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, and 12 p.m. Pacific on A2Zen.fm. This is the Invisible Dimension radio show with Sue Tribolini. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. at 815-880-8255. In Canada, 613-800-8736. In the UK, 033-0001-0625. Or Skype us at A2Zen.fm. You can also connect at www.A2Zen.fm. Click on the chat room button to join us live. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back.
Yes.
So it's not just back to the program, but back to the future, possibly? That was the topic.
I love looking at the future from the present from the future. Like they say, the future just ain't what it used to be. I see that you're wondering if I did answer the question. So in terms of feeling that you have lost the gifts that you felt or embraced as a child, I would just welcome in that child self. You are still alive and well in your past. That's another way that I go beyond time with clients. When I merge with their timeless consciousness, if I feel a pull to go to the past, I will be seeing through their eyes at a strategic time. It could have been when someone was being inappropriate with them, or when they were seeing presences. I remember a client who saw spirits, and the priest in her school brought her to the front of the class and had her sit by the potbelly stove so she'd know what hell felt like. So we went back to that scene and restaged it in a way that empowered her and let her release and forgive and have her present self, her adult self, adopt the little girl self and telepathize to the child back there in the past. I'm over here in the future. I can take care of you now. All we need is our connection to a higher power. I can take care of you. You can be the little girl self. You're safe now. All we need is that connection. So you can come live with me now. And I can feel the child self saying, oh, goody, now I get to write those stories. And sure enough, the future self, the adult self, has become an editor. So it's creating a pathway from the present to that child self. So you want to go back to the feeling of how it felt to have those gifts, and open up the scene, and you'll be shown the strategic one that's for your highest good. And restage it as if you're the director. Okay, you stand over there. Okay, you parents, I know you're coming from fear, and that's okay. That's your path. And here's my future self now. Here's Angela from the future, and I'm going with her now. But thank you for all that you did to set the stage. Many times if we come to a childhood where we're abused or we're taught to be felt less worthy, unlovable. Sometimes it's recreating a semblance of a theme we died with, an untruth where we may have died feeling persecuted, abandoned, unworthy, heathenness. We may come to a childhood that reinvigorates those false beliefs to then rise up and discover something new and move on. So the abused child that often will come the talented therapist. From the challenges come the gifts. So you can go to the past and embrace that little girl self who trusted those gifts and let her know that you're adopting her now and that you support her expanding to be the fullness of who she is this lifetime. When you're driving along, feel her in the passenger seat. You're taking care of her now. And the other thing this can do is it helps you shift to your more adult self. So many men and women are attracting mommies and daddies because they didn't rise up. They haven't evolved from being the child self to the adult self. So when you have the feeling that you're taking care of your own child self, it sort of elevates you to being more the parent. And that can have a very positive shift that can definitely affect the future. Oftentimes, it's really a hoot when I'm chatting with the future partner of a client whom the client has yet to meet. And the first time this happened, and I get different variations of this, I see the client in this future moment walking along with her then partner, and they're walking along looking at land where they hope to build a cabin. The higher self of the future partner in his red Pendleton plaid shirt turns to me from the future and says, "Tell her I know she wants me there right now, but we've done it that way before, and she never knew what made her so unhappy. Our paths are configured this lifetime so that she can figure that out before we meet, and then we can move on and do new things." Sometimes I call it a misinterpretation of a soul sensing. When a soul misinterprets that connection to someone they've met. The client who said, "I've met my soulmate, I just know it's him." He's married and has 5 kids, but I just know that love will triumph over all. And I said, well, you have to look at why your paths are configured to be unavailable to each other. Chances are you've been there, done that, and you're back to support something new in each other. And sure enough, I saw that they'd owned a general store in Prairie Times, and she was the force behind the success, and he was back to support her creativity. And so like the ego self that likes to compartmentalize and conceptualize or make things black and white, these nuances, these shades of gray are so much deeper and more textured and, as I say, nuanced, where I'll say to someone, who's just fallen for someone, where it might simply be soul recognition, like, oh, he feels so familiar, I just know we've known each other before. Well, yeah, but take it a step at a time and let things unfold in their own way, and all will be revealed in right timing. And sometimes it's just a very unique kind of friendship that they signed up for. Yeah.
So is there any danger in getting into the flow, into the current, and looking for I don't know, or asking questions of another dimension? I mean, should we be asking also for protection? Or I know in your invocation you ask for the highest good. Or
yeah, we always need to surround ourselves with light. And I used to love people watching on the New York subway. And just the minute I'd hear the ding of the doors opening, it became automatic. I'd put myself in a bubble of light. But also, it's not bigger than us. I had an apprentice who got future disasters. So she said to God, or to the universe, okay, if I'm supposed to get this kind of information, I want 2 weeks' notice. And now she gets it 2 weeks ahead of time. I always ask in my invocation that the information I get be for my client and my highest good to receive in ways that will evolve us and always in the light of God. And I never refer to God as a he, because I personally believe that man created God in his image. And my perception of a higher power is infinite, incredible energy that is nothing but unconditional love. That's just my particular spin. But in terms of, it's what you focus on and pay attention to. And that's what's so unfortunate about belief systems that ride on fear, that promote fear. Because it's all in the light is nothing but good. And so I've never had a problem. And again, it's what you pay attention to. And you can specify. And it's interesting, in one of my books I describe how one of my clients works for FEMA. And I never see future disasters except when I read this client. As I merge with her timeless consciousness, I go to a future moment, which happens to be the next disaster where she's going to be working. And so years ago, she met me in Chicago. I'd read her over the phone for years. It was the first time we met in person. And I said, and there's going to be something about a tree or a building falling, I don't know, and then something about a ship. Maybe you're going to be taking a cruise. Well, a few weeks later, she was working at Ground Zero after 9/11. And again, it's all interpretation. She was having lunch every day on the USS Comfort. So when I present future information, and the client, it's humorous to see what the client's logical self tries to do with it. And that, well, here's my best example. Reading a client who was going through a horrific divorce, and her husband had turned her kids against her, and he wasn't processing the emotions. She was, biting the bullet. Well, I have to move on. I can't look back. And I said, well, if you can work with this and let this challenge expand you, and if you can process these emotions, whether it's counseling or a group or whatever, here's a potential future moment where you're in a room and you're reflecting back on your life at how grateful you are for all the gifts your challenge has brought you. You've been through a lot, but you're reflecting on how much it's brought you, all the learning and expansion. And there's something about a wooden beam and butterflies. Well, of course, she said, oh, that must be my parents' place. They have wooden beams, da-da-da. And I said, it's future. It always unfolds much more creatively, imaginatively than our imagination could stretch. 7 years later, I hear from her. And apparently she had developed breast cancer, which some of us believe that when energy can't move, when it's not processed, it stagnates and becomes tumors. And that sounds glib and generalizing, but it does. There is credence to that, or validity. In the process of her healing, and she went into remission, but in the process of her healing, she was in group therapy, and she became a Buddhist and went every day to the meditation center in Manhattan, where one day she found herself in the meditation room, reflecting on her life, giving thanks for her blessings, and she looks up, and there's a wooden beam across the ceiling with butterflies stamped on it. Who knew? Yeah. So it's almost a carrot on the stick, It's this pulsating future moment that can kind of synchronize events and pull you towards it if you're present and if you're dealing with your stuff.
We're coming up to another break.
Uh-huh.
And when we come back from this one, perhaps you could tell people how to connect with you and what's coming up for you. So off
Sure.
we go. Back in a minute.
Many of us think we are stuck in the physical dimension, that our problems around money, relationships, and work are real and unchangeable as we mimic or adopt the beliefs, norms, and viewpoints of our families, cultures, and those around us. What if we are stuck in our heads? What if there is something else? What if what we imagine to be universal truth is malleable and changeable? How do we know what we know? Tune into the Invisible Dimension radio show with Sue Tribolini to explore these questions and learn practical tools to change your life every Wednesday at 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, and 12 p.m. Pacific on A2Zen.fm. This is the Invisible Dimension radio show with Sue Tribolini. To participate in the program today, please call in the U.S. at 815-880-8255. In Canada, 613-800-8736. In the UK, 033-0001-0625. Or Skype us at A2Zen.fm. You can also connect at www.A2Zen.fm. Click on the chat room button to join us live. Now, back to the program.
And welcome back to the Invisible Dimension radio show. And this is your last chance to connect in the chat room. So please click on that chat button if you have any questions. So, Louise.
Yes.
Tell us what's coming up for you and how to contact you.
Well, I used to do, my name, louisehauck.com, LOUISEHAUCK.com. And if you go to services, there's information about phone consultations. I used to be on the road more. I would do as many as 13 city tours twice a year, and now I'm doing more online as technology has improved. I do group readings. I used to call them readings in the round. I do those over Skype online, with you get, I think it's 5 or more participants, 5 to 8 participants. It's really fun to do that online. I also fly out to wherever a group comes together. The apprenticeship program I've mentioned, and where I get 6 or more people together, I do a 6-week intuition advancement series. We do it through Adobe Connect. I'm able to show videos, break people into separate breakout rooms to practice with each other. Occasionally, I offer Saturday questions where people can come on and ask one question. And I answer questions in a way that makes it instructive for everyone.
Is that also Skype?
Yes?
Is that via Skype?
Yeah, we do that in Skype, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And when for example, it was fun. I remember I used to go regularly to Columbus, Ohio, where a wonderful coordinator would get groups together. And it's fun to do a group reading because sometimes the information comes so quickly, and when it's right in front of you, you can't identify it. And so I got a nice momentum going around the group, and I come to this fellow who's the last one in the group, and I said, "Your mother's here, and she's doing this pantomime, like throwing food your way. I don't know, was she a Jewish mother? Was she trying to stuff food down you?" And he laughed. He said, "I know exactly what Mom's talking about." And he said, "When Mom died, I inherited her famous spice cake recipe, and I couldn't find the recipe for the burnt sugar icing. So I called out to Mom, 'Mom, if you're there, send me the recipe.'" A week later, he was meeting with a client. The client stops mid-sentence and gives him the recipe. So the mother was saying, "I sent you the recipe." Another example of how we piggyback on each other's frequency. We're all part of each other. We all channel. The times when I know when I'm doing talks and just the perfect, clearest, simplest words come out of my mouth, and I'll say, "Who said that? Somebody write that down." And so when we're in alignment, the divine can work through us, and it's just marvelous. The clarity, the wisdom that can come through us. So, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, I've also been in your workshops where when information has come through, it's not always just for one person.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting phenomenon. On my YouTube channel, I think it's Louise House channel, I think. There's two examples. When I spoke at East West Bookstore in Seattle last spring, where I'll be again in April, when I started to tune into the audience, the information will fit for two people. Well, here this time it fit for three, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, this isn't twinning, as I call it. This is tripling. One time on a cruise, it happened that two people sitting next to each other who didn't know each other, both of them had just tossed out 10 sandals from their deceased father's possessions, and their father now in the non-physical, who's hooked up with the brother John, who'd been in the military. And I mean, all the way down the line, all these subtle and specific qualities fit. In Seattle that time, it happened for three, that three of them had just been going through their file cabinet thinking how to sell the car, had a chat with the neighbor over the fence, and on and on and on. So all three, you'll see me say, oh my gosh, and then this, another one raises their hand, yeah, me too. So I don't know if that's, we're so used to thinking linearly that one thing comes after the next. But the universe really operates holistically. It comes in from all directions. It converges from beyond time and place. And that's just, I just go to my knees saying, thank you for letting me be part of this. It's just so enlightening. It's so vast. It's so exciting. Can you tell that I... Pardon?
Sorry. Well, I was just thinking of one of my personal favorite examples was when you were doing a reading downstairs in my house for someone.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to tell that story?
Oh, yes, Tina the Tree Lady.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, you were coordinating for me. You were when I would speak at wasn't it Discover You in Seattle?
Yeah.
And I was walking through the audience, and I stopped at this gal, and I said, "There's something about you and trees." And Tina started to weep. She said, I know, nobody knows. I don't know why, but there's just something about me and trees. So she later came to your place where I was doing consultations down below. And in the middle of her session, we were interrupted by, well, this was the year Lord of the Rings came out, and it looked like one of those tree people was walking towards us. And I said that this tree person has a gift for you. Whatever. And so I went on with things, and then when we were done, we went upstairs, and you greeted Tina with this watercolor picture of a tree.
Yes, I bought a tree picture in a yard sale, and I was sitting upstairs looking at it, thinking, this belongs to Tina. And we're actually really close to the end of the show, so is there anything else that you want to say to leave the audience with? We've got your website.
Let me just finish with that we traced back and realized that you had the thought to give it to her the minute the tree person showed up in our reading. So, again, an example of how this multidimensional information gets communicated. No, I'm just so thrilled with your show, and I if you can tell, I love talking about my work. It's my greatest passion in my life, besides my kids. And, just to trust that we are all connected and to find ways to get into the flow, because we're all in the stream together, and sometimes we'll feel that current of unity, as I call it, that flash mob scene, where you really don't know where you end and another begins, and boy, there's nothing like that sense of connectivity. And thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for a great show, and please come back next week, same time, 12 noon Pacific, Wednesday, where my special guest will be Danielle Veranda, and she's talking about following energy. So it's a similar topic. Thank you so much, Louise, and thanks to all the folks at A to Zen, and thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Invisible Dimension Radio Show. Sue Tribolini will return next Wednesday at 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, and 12 p.m. Pacific on A to Zen.fm. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have a great week noticing the invisible dimension.